Everybody to Resume Review Strategies for Mentors. And so Jodi and I will be your host for today. We've got a special guest star as well. And so let me just start by saying hello. My name's Ronda Ansted, and I have a career consultation practice called Be the Change Career Consulting. And I am also an RPCV, and so I was in South Africa from 2007 to 2009, and I'm also a certified resume writer, and was for a while working for DevX as one of their resume writers. So my specialty is international development resumes, but I've written and reviewed all sorts. And so basically I'm here working with NPCA to support our evacuated Peace Corps volunteers, our mentors, and to make sure that we give you all the services that you need to succeed in your career. So over to you, Jodi.
Okay, thank you everyone. And my camera has been acting up, so I apologize. My video, I'm not going to have myself on video right now. So just so that you know, it's not that I want to hide from you. I would love to actually be with you and by you and all of that, but I am listening. I am actively participating, even if I can't be seen. So what I want to do is introduce myself first. I am the Career Services Specialist with the NPCA's Global Reentry Program, which is a brand new program that is designed to assist both the evacuees and RPCVs with their career transition and such. So I am thrilled to be here today with you. My background, I am also an RPCV, and having served in Ecuador from 94 through 97. And I worked for years, about 12 exactly, in Peace Corps headquarters doing similar work to what I'm doing right now. So I'm just thrilled to be here with you and with Rhonda. Thank you for co-leading this with me, as well as Randy Adams, who we're going to get to momentarily as well. So if you can please advance the slide, Rhonda. I appreciate it. We're going to be talking, our audience here, this session is really designed as part 2 and part 3. So the first part of it, and it's much of the hour that we'll be here, we'll be talking about and showing you some sample ideas of different resume styles and helping you to be best prepared to then be able to help the RPCVs that you are working with as mentors. So it is technically designed as a mentor training, but we do have, I think, several RPCVs who signed up for it who are not in the mentoring program. And I think that's great too, because you will certainly learn a lot from it. And it could prepare you to then be maybe a mentor in the future, because it's all about paying it forward and really helping in this way. So we're excited, whoever you are who's here with us. We're going to be talking through some things, and then close to the end of the time, we're actually going to do, so Randy's going to talk about his approach to doing functional resumes versus the chronological and the style that he really likes. And then I'm going to actually do, at the very end, I'm going to do a live resume review with somebody who's graciously allowed us to use her as an example, where I'm going to show you how I give feedback when I meet with a client and the kinds of questions I ask up front before we get into the resume review, and then going through the actual resume and giving suggestions. So hopefully it'll be a helpful session for you. You are free to participate in as much as you can. And if you have to leave before we're finished, know that you will also be able to watch the recording for this. So great. So let's go ahead and start a little bit about talking about the resume. And your resume really is your first impression. It's extremely important. It's very hard to change a first impression. They get your resume before they even meet you for the interview, right? And really your resume is what oftentimes, or more often than not, it's what is going to make the difference between you being forwarded on and put into that to be considered further file, which is where you want to land, obviously, or making it to that circular file, aka trash. Nobody wants to, or recycle or shred with the PII and all. Nobody wants to make it to that pile, of course. So hopefully by giving the RPCVs and other clients, mentees, the advice that you can help them incorporate so that they don't land in that in that pile. So let's go ahead. I want to talk to you, Rhonda, if you can advance it to the next slide, please, very quickly. Thank you. This is really this is a sample resume, and it looks very busy. So I apologize for sharing it. I know that you can't read all of the words here, but the purpose of this is to show you kind of that overall style, how it would look, right? All of those red arrows and those comments on the side are things that we've added in so that you can you can see, you can know, like, these are the examples. For example, use ED action verbs. So you'll have an arrow coming down to say that, right? Your contact information at the top. You don't have to put your street address necessarily. You could just have city, state, and some people don't even put city and state anymore because we have a flexible work, force, and people, right now everybody's working remotely anyway. But all of that, your name should be the biggest thing on the page. I'm just looking at a couple of these arrows to see key qualifications. That's one of the things that I did want to spend a moment on, because I am a fan of a reverse chronological resume, or for certain cases, as Randy's going to talk about as well, I think in many cases, sometimes the functional can be great as well. But I like a very clean resume, a very consistent resume. So the consistency and the size of the headers, the fonts used, all of those kinds of things, right? But the key qualifications is that #1 header. This is the alternative to objective. I am not a fan of the objective, because the objective, for years, it was you would put your objective, down. What was your objective? And people ended up putting something to the effect of a rewarding opportunity with XYZ company with opportunities for growth and advancement. Well, no duh, you want a job with that company. We know that. But how can you set yourself apart and talk about what you bring and why you're so unique to this job is really more what you want to do. So for example, in that first bullet under the key qualifications, I usually recommend that being an adjective plus a noun that describes you as the person, as related to that position, and then either, if you have a master's, put it in there. That's great. With MPH, or with master's in whatever it is, if you want to put what it's in. And X years of, and then fill it. What kind of experience is the experience that's related to what they're wanting you to have, right? So that's a way to, in one bullet, kind of quantify you and shape you as the person, right? If you don't have a master's, just leave off the education part, unless it's specific to, if they're looking for a bachelor's in chemistry and you have that, you could put that. But a lot of times I tell people just to leave the bachelor's off, because the master's sets you apart. The bachelor's doesn't, right? So you want them to then be wowed by other things that are going to pull them in and make them want to talk to you, all of that. So that's a couple of things in the key qualifications, right? It allows you, when you have the number of years, you can say, over 3 years of specialized experience in program management or monitoring and evaluation or whatever it is, right? Relative to that job. So I always tell people, for the key qualifications, I usually recommend they stick to maybe, somewhere between 2 and 4, maximum 5, and 5 is a lot, right? So you can put in what makes sense and tailor it to the job. But in their master resume, I recommend people start with a master resume and have everything about you. And you can put all kinds of key qualifications so that you can just go and grab those ones that make most sense, right? When you're doing that application. So that just, I think that helps a great deal, make it go faster, and it works really well. Sometimes you can't maybe quantify a key qualification with an exact number of years. That might not be as impressive, but you might say proven XYZ skills in, or proven ability to, and whatever they're looking for, that skill. So proven's a nice, ask me, I can prove it, right? I like that in key qualifications. Sometimes you will hear people saying that they don't like key qualifications, and that usually is not that they don't like key qualifications. They've seen poorly written ones, so they don't have a good base to compare it from. So for them, I usually say, well, give it a chance if you use better kinds of the key qualifications. But that does bring me to another point, and I know we're going really quickly through this because we have a lot that we want to cover. But if you talk to 10 people and you ask them their opinion on resumes, how many opinions are you going to get? Probably 10, maybe 11. You're going to get a lot of different opinions because people have their own likes and dislikes, and that's okay to some degree, right? So I always try to give my logic for why I believe what I believe, but I always say to my client, and I would recommend that you do the same when you're talking with your mentor and others, feel free to take what works for you, leave the rest. That's fine. So there's not that pressure, and they don't have to, because it's really frustrating as somebody who's come back and you're talking with different people and you hear polar opposite things and you're like, well, I was just told this. Well, just listen to the why, listen to what makes sense for you, and make the decision. So, and try it, try the style that you think might work best. And guess what? If you don't get a lot of responses, what might you do? Maybe you're open to trying another one. See if you get more responses from that. So just very quickly, because I know we have a lot to get through here as well. I like professional experience as the next header, after key qualifications, and you generally start with your work experience, right? But I don't like calling it work experience. Work experience, I just feel like I feel like professional experience just makes it sound more professional. So that's my own personal thing. So I always tell people to put professional experience, not just experience, professional experience, right? And then do it reverse chronological, so the most recent job first, and work your way back, right? So for many of the RPCVs that have just been evacuated, of course, their most recent work experience is, Peace Corps. So how do they list that? That's always the difficulty too, right? That you don't have to say volunteer. You were a volunteer. I was a volunteer. I was proud to be a volunteer. But, were you a health education facilitator? Or, rural health educator, was my other title. And I used that more, not because I wasn't proud of volunteer, but unfortunately, some people, when they see the word volunteer, they instantly discredit it, which they shouldn't, but they do. So, so maybe think of alternative names they could put in for their title, right? And then just a couple other things to point out on this, and then I want to move on because I know we don't have a lot of time here, but in the education, use those ED action verbs. Synonyms, if it's managed, you don't have to just always say managed, 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 managed. Certainly use managed more than the other words if that's the word they're using in the job description. But think about using, what are some other words for managed? In the chat box, people drop it in there. We want to make this interactive. What's coming up there, Rhonda? Anything? I guess
right.
I can see
Well,
lead.
Yeah, no, I can talk a little bit more about the bullet points themselves.
Great.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Rhonda. I will let you handle that in there as well then. But look at the consistency of when you have, however you want to list it is fine. The organization on the first line with the location. I kind of like that together because what organization and where you did it, and then the title on the next line with the dates makes sense to me because it allows you to have multiple titles and be able to put multiple jobs underneath that one big header. So just be consistent with whatever you do. Some people will fit everything on one line and that's fine, but then they'll have one experience that's long with the titles and it has to go on another line and it looks kind of weird. So things like that, just really consistent. Take these recommendations to heart and know that you're going to get all of this on a follow-up, access to it. We've created a Dropbox and you have, you'll have access to look at these samples and use them as you wish, print them out and use them, okay? Now, what I'm not showing on here is the next, this is the first page to kind of give you an idea, and you'll get the second page with all the other parts, but after education comes, or after experience, after professional experience, comes education. And that's where, reverse chronological generally that you would put, if somebody only has one, like they just got their, bachelor's, that's fine, but they just have one entry for that. I always recommend they try to beef that up with another entry. whether it's their Peace Corps pre-service training or some international cultural exchange program they did, something like that, because it gives the appearance of more, it shows more education. And so when people are scanning and they see that one education, they instantly know it's a bachelor's, right? But if they see more than one, they like don't necessarily rule you out if they're, you know, thinking bachelor's. Once they get in and they talk with you in person, you're going to wow them with their greatness, is what I always say to clients. And it's not going to matter that you don't have that master's always, right? But you have to get there. So that's a little bit about the traditional resume, and I'm going to actually stop talking there. Rhonda, how are we on time? Should I take a question or just go on and take it at the end?
Nope, we are running behind on time.
Okay.
And so we will have some time for interaction a little bit later, but I do recommend if you have questions, please put that in the chat box. I haven't seen so far, but and so we'll try to keep on top of those as we're going forward. We know we are jam-packing this, and so yeah, you've got -5 minutes, Jodi, so please please set our time machine, and let's keep going.
Okay, so -5 minutes. Let me just say the quick tips for reviewing the resume. Just looking at, we talked about first impression. The appearance is so important. If it doesn't look neat and professional, that's key. We already talked about key qualifications, targeting it to the job that you're seeking, consistency. I've said that like 10 times, I think already. That's huge. Accomplishments. So include and quantify your accomplishments and the outcomes. And Rhonda's going to speak more about this as well in her part, but not just what you did, like what did you, awarded, whatever, if you received an award, or the outcomes she's going to talk about, achieving a 23% increase in literacy rates, whatever it is, that always pops and helps. So consistent tense, first person past tense, don't use I though, is what I generally say, just so, led, whatever, incorporated, the ED action verbs, but the first person past tense, no I or my. And then finally doing that really good, review, good grammar, externalize. And with that, I'm going to turn it over, or I'm done with this part. Let's go to the next slide and we'll see what we have. And it's Rhonda, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Jodi. And so what I want to talk about is a really powerful strategy for writing compelling bullet points. And so you will have heard, a lot of you would have heard about this before, and so I just kind of want to show this to you in action, because honestly, like, the format and all of that of the resume is important so that it leads people to the content. And so when you're reviewing resumes, you do want to make sure that everything's easy to read so that they can really see your accomplishments. And so just going through this process, this is also really super useful for interview prep as well. So to have the people that you're working with to start with the situation, what did they walk into, and help them think through how to quantify that as much as possible. How long did things take? How much money was spent? How many people? And so you start with the before picture. Then move to the obstacles that you were facing as you were trying to, to make this change or to accomplish your duties. So that could be high turnover, that could be during a reorg, that could be during a transition, no buy-in from senior leadership. So this is not always included in your resume, but it can be especially helpful if the actual results might not be all that impressive on their own. So then you give it some context. Then from there, you talk about what you did. This is in general how people write their resume bullets, is they just, what did they do? They produced this, they led this, they managed that. So to make your resume and your mentee's resume really stand out, you want to focus on the results. So how did things get better, either directly or indirectly because of your efforts? People struggle with this. And this is why starting with the situation, the before picture, can help people think about the after picture. So did morale improve? Did turnover decrease? Were you able to get more money? Were you able to get higher attendance? Like Jodi was saying, like increased literacy rates. And so, and starting with the situation, ending with the results, that's where you can start quantifying things to get that 34% increase in blah, blah, blah. So I want to show you how I have worked this with one of my clients. And so the bullet point that my client started with was promoted Oxfam's Green Sky policy, oversaw travel, and recommended ways to reduce cost. So I know what she did. I have no idea about what the impact was. So we went through the SOAR process. And so basically, you know, she talked about how she was pulled in very quickly and on a recommendation, talked about obstacles that she needed to pick up on this very quickly, and short-staffed. And then what did she actually do? So she created a streamlined system. And then we went kind of point by point. When I started, it took about 8 hours to make travel arrangements under this new policy. When I streamlined the process, it only took 2. So then there was a savings of 6 hours per trip. Then we were able to quantify that. How much was her hourly rate? $30 an hour. So then if there were 10 trips per month, then we can break it down into monthly savings, or as we did here, streamline the travel logistics under Oxfam's Green Sky policy, saving $10,000 in the first 6 months amidst a severe staffing shortage. So that gives the employers a lot more information than what you did. You may have promoted Green Skies, but nobody took you up on the recommendations. So by saying that what I did saved money, and let me tell you, there's not an organization in the world that doesn't want to save money or get money, then that is putting it in language that hiring managers and HR specialists really understand. And so I want to just again, I think we're providing this checklist, Jodi, so that when you are reviewing someone's resume, you can just go through this very quickly to make sure that there's consistencies, there's no spelling errors. So what we're really wanting to give you are the tools to do very effective and quick but thorough resume reviews that help your mentees learn the skill of how to write a compelling resume.
Exactly.
Okay, so Randy, we want to bring you in, and I have muted you. Okay, I think we're good. So why don't you talk about your experience with the functional resumes?
And Randy, if you can first introduce yourself and the number of resumes you've reviewed, that's always incredible.
My name is Randy Adams. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic a little after Columbus arrived. I've been working with RPCV since I retired about 8 years ago, and I've probably met with close to 200 now, helping them find jobs, mostly in the DC area, but I've had some in other areas of the country. I'm not the career development professional here. That's Ronda and Jodi. My role is more of an experienced hiring official, I guess I would say. In that role, I've probably viewed thousands of resumes. And when I talk to some of my colleagues, I say, you know, usually I don't take more than a minute to read a resume. If I can't find what I'm looking for within that minute, I just don't have the time. And seriously, when you have positions that sometimes you get 400 or 500 resumes for, you can't put in more than a minute. And so many of them would tell me, well, I can't spend more than 30 seconds. I first ran across a functional resume when I did one myself at the advice of a career development counselor in 1998 when I was applying for a CEO position. And what I liked about it was, and here's the example here, everything that Jodi and Rhonda have said are also applicable to functional resumes. The difference is in the formatting. Basically, as a hiring official, I'm looking for someone who understands what to do in fixing the problem I have. So I have a position that has to do certain things, and I'm looking for someone who can do those things. I don't have time to search a resume to figure out if you know how to do what I want you to do. I don't care if you were a cheerleader in college or you were a part of a fraternity. None of that, it just goes by the wayside. I just want to know, do you have the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to do the job I need done in my organization? And so what the functional resume does, it's basically a marketing tool. You're marketing yourself. The job announcement says, I need someone who can do A, B, C. The functional resume says, here's A, here's B, here's C, here's what I've done in those areas. So as a hiring official, I don't have to look through that resume to piecemeal all the pieces I need for the job. You're telling me this is what you're looking for. This is my experience in those areas. So that resume I pay attention to, and we'll definitely give it more credence. Now, this doesn't dismiss parts of the chronological resume. When we get later in the presentation, I'll be showing you a chronological resume of one of my current mentees. Actually, I'm working with 15 people right now. And I've got next to it what we developed into that functional resume. The one caveat I would give to what Jodi had said, a functional resume for me is also a handout, not just for job postings, but rather, well, resumes are important. Networking is even more important. You have to get to know people who get to know who you are, see your face, hear about your experiences. And a functional resume is something you can leave with them to remind them of who you were. So making those contacts is just as important, if not more important, than the resume. Sometimes I find people obsess over the resume. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be absolutely constantly worked with. I disagree with that. As a hiring official, again, show me what I need to see. Don't worry about every single little word. But anyway, that's my bias as a hiring official. When we get to the presentation in a while, you'll see how the functional resume, because it doesn't show you page 2 here.
That's on the next screen, actually. So if you want to, Rhonda, could you advance that, please? Thanks.
Okay. Now, see, you still have an employment history here. So it's sort of a combination of that chronological resume with those functional skill areas. And similar to what Rhonda says, and also Jodi, I spent a lot of time talking with people that show me their functional resume to tease out the specifics in their bulleted points, because those are the things that become the subheadings if they can be aggregated into sections. But I've hit my 5 minutes, so I'll definitely share more about creating a functional resume later in the presentation.
Okay, great, Jodi. So again, let's just plow through the federal resume component of this so that we can get to our resume reviews. And you'll need to unmute yourself.
Oh, muting would be nice. Unmuting, right?
Yes, yes.
Great.
We're a fan of
So,
unmute.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So we are going to go very quickly through federal resumes because there's so much on them, and I'm going to refer you to some external sources. And then if you have additional questions, you can certainly always reach out to myself. Um, Federal resumes have everything that a normal resume has, right? You're reverse chronological anyway. But in addition, there are some additional things that are always pretty much always found on a federal resume. And so your citizenship, if you're not a U.S. citizen, your highest GS level, that's only if you've been a federal employee beforehand. If you haven't, don't worry about it. The big thing is for each of the jobs, you're going to list like 5 additional details. Your hours per week, your salary, your supervisor's name, their contact information, and whether or not it's okay to contact them. So that's the big thing, right? All of that information, now salary has now become, for many of them, it's optional. Even on Fed, when you're going in on the resume builder on USA Jobs, which I'll introduce in a moment, where you may not have to put the resume, which is great. I mean, your salary, which is great. I think that's much better to negotiate that later. But it used to be mandatory, and on some you'll still see that it is mandatory. Any veterans preference that you might have of note on there with the special hiring authority, if and I presume if we have evacuees on here, you all were granted NCE, the non-competitive eligibility. Definitely make note of that right up front in your resume if you have that. That's great. So those are some of the main differences. Rhonda, thank you. You read my mind there. Great. USAjobs.gov is probably your best source of information on federal resume writing that you can refer mentees and other folks to for additional help. The resume builder itself simplifies the process. So you can actually build your entire resume by just filling out a questionnaire, and it puts it all into the form. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that style, but here's the deal. With federal, and you have to have the exact information, what you need to have there. And if you don't have exactly what you need to have, they can DQ you or disqualify you, and you don't even get looked at. You don't even get forwarded on. You want to make sure you have every chance to be forwarded on among those best qualified to get that chance of, having your resume reviewed more, and then a resume, an interview panel, and hopefully an offer. So definitely be very careful. Can you go to the next slide? I do want to say on USAjobs.gov, they are offering fairly frequent Zoom or whatever platform online webinars on a variety of topics related to federal resume writing, navigating USA Jobs and the federal job search, and interviewing. All very good topics. So I would encourage you to go through those because they really walk you through. If you're at all interested in that or have a client, refer them to go on, to those. It's very, very helpful. And this is just showing you a sample. This is kind of a hybrid, if you will. It is a federal resume. It incorporates the required information from federal resumes, but it looks a little neater, I hope, than the printout that you get from USA Jobs, which everything's flush left and it's very long and whatever. So just a couple things to notice how it's different, and then I'm going to leave you to your own to explore this or ask questions later on in the Q&A part. And that is within, like, you'll notice these all cap like headers underneath you'll have your titles, and there'll be multiple titles oftentimes, right? And then you'll have those were your roles that you played. It doesn't necessarily have to be only an actual title from your SF50 whatever. And then now these are in paragraph forms. I'm not a big fan of paragraphs because I think bullets get read a lot easier. But if you're going to do the paragraphs, make them somewhat short, and you can even use sometimes those those all cap words, or sometimes bolding certain words to help draw attention to it. That can definitely help. So just to give you a little bit of how a federal resume would look different. So with that, I'm going to ask Rhonda to go to the next slide. The sources and resources just for this presentation, but also what I'm most excited about is the information that we're compiling from what you all have shared as your favorite resources that you've used with either mentees or friends or yourself. And we're compiling that all to be able to share it out with you so that you'll have full access to all of those great resources. So definitely that's the best resource that's on here, I think. Let's go on to the next slide here, Rhonda. Thank you. And at this point, okay, we are going to, before we go to this, Rhonda, I think we should take a couple questions because I think we're okay on time. If I'm looking at it, my watch correctly, I think we're okay on time, and I hate to just rush all the way through until the very end and then take questions. Are there any that are coming up right now? Do you have them maybe in the chat box?
Well, we've got a comment about the pay scale that should be specified on the federal resumes, and so I think that part of it is with federal resumes. There's a lot of complexities, and so Ben, thank you for sharing that information with us. And again, we're going to definitely recommend that you, if you're doing a lot of federal resume reviews, that you get familiar with that as much as possible.
Yep.
But yeah, the other questions, I've been answering them in the chat
great.
box.
Great.
So,
Rhonda, one other thing I wanted to add to the salaries thing, people usually when they're asking, I'm so confused about salary, it's because they've never been federal. So don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about trying to put in what you don't have. But the important thing is Peace Corps volunteer service does not count as federal employment when you are applying for jobs. So you're not going to have a pay grade, is it the GS or FP or whatever, unless you are working for Peace Corps staff headquarters or in country as staff. Then if it's a full-fledged government job, then yes, you would have it. So just take that into consideration as well. However, once you get a job, remember, once you get a federal job, you can buy back your Peace Corps service. You can make a service credit payment, which allows you to then count your years of service in Peace Corps toward your vacation accrual, for example. When I started with Peace Corps, I instantly started with 3+ years of experience because I was in Peace Corps. I bought back my time, and I went from 4 hours of leave per pay period to 6. So, great kind of benefits like that too. So don't forget about that.
Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes to do, and we want to do 2 resume reviews. We understand that this is kind of the meat of what we're doing. And so both Jodi and Randy are able to stay a little bit longer. So just to let you know that we do encourage you to ask questions as we go along through this. And if we run over, we're able to continue going forward if you are. And we'll be recording the entire time. So if you do have to leave directly on the hour, then you will have access to the recording to see anything that you might have missed.
Yep. So Randy's going to first, I think, take over and maybe spend we were thinking about 10 minutes. Is that what we were thinking?
Yeah, well, Jodi, you had also mentioned that maybe you wanted to go first because you're doing a live resume review.
Yeah, well, and that would be great. Unfortunately, my client is at the doctor's office. She had an accident and is in the doctor's office, so I can do it regardless. I can still do it. I just won't have her in front of me. So I'll be doing the same things. Instead of asking it to her, I will say, at this point, I would ask the mentee, what is your purpose? What is your, what are you looking for? So I'll still do it.
Okay, great. So then, so we did have another question. If they work for the U.S. Census, will that affect the starting level at a future federal job? Do we know that?
If they worked for the U.S. Census, as a census taker.
Mm-hmm.
I am not entirely sure. I don't think that counts as a federal, full-time federal permanent or career, whatever position. I think that's more of a contractor, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be. I would ask whoever you're working with on that to make sure, if it is federal, you will do a ton of paperwork coming in, like so much. So I have a feeling it's not, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right. So Randy, we're going to turn this over to you. Oh, wait, how are we going to,
nope, he's going to share his
screen. Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen here.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. And Randy, we need to unmute you and and are you ready to share your screen?
Yes. And how do I do that?
Okay. So at the bottom, you see where it says of Zoom, it should say share screen.
Yep.
The green button.
Box. So click on that and then select the document that you want to share with us.
It works best if you have it opened.
I have it open.
Mhm.
Right? Do I hit share?
Yep.
Yes.
So click on it and then hit share, and you should be good. Something's coming
There
up.
we go. Real-time training. So we're seeing
That's
your
beautiful, but
Okay.
yeah, we're
Uh,
seeing your desktop. Now we
that's
want
fine. He can click from there if he has it on the desktop, or
this is it. So
okay.
the two other resources to share. This one's called Stand Out in the Job Market.
Mm.
I'll be sending these to Jodi so she can share them.
Great.
This one in particular, I like this. I don't like everything in this guide, but I like this one. It's talking about the why. Why is it you want to do whatever work it is you want to do? To get a sense of what's really driving you, because there's so many alternative ways to do something. And so I really want to talk with the mentee about what is it that motivates you? What's your passion? That's what you want to look for. And let's look at the various avenues to achieve that. So that's one guide. Another guide is winning at job hunting. Mel Schnappner is also a career counselor. He was an RPCV. And while it says, do not share this, he has specifically said that he is giving this to the RPCV community. So this is available to you too, and Jodi will have both of these.
great.
What I wanted to show you was a particular mentee I'm working with. This is her chronological resume when we first started, one page. One of the many things I like about functional resumes is it's good for people who have very little experience, but it's also good for people who have a lot of experience. In my own resume, this is 2 pages, and this was put together after I had 13 other jobs to become the executive director of the Rural Community Assistance Partnership. But yet I was able to put my career into 2 pages. So it's either for very little experience, or so much experience you can overwhelm someone. I've dealt with academics who actually have resumes that go to 29 pages. So the key again, as I said, I've had 2 mentees recently where we've done functional resumes that they had contacts in federal agencies. They sent their functional resume to their contacts who said, now I understand what you're looking for, but I know the office this should go to. And they shared their functional resume with their federal colleague who shared it with another office who got in contact with them and said, we'd like to hire you, now fill out a federal resume. So it's a good way just sharing your experience. In this particular one, she's interested in international development with a focus on monitoring and evaluation. So her interests and qualifications include her sort of why statement in terms of why she's looking for something, and then her background in terms of some of the skills she has. This one is sort of a generic one. What we're working on is, okay, give me 3 to 5 areas where you've got some information, some experience and expertise. So looking at working in international development and the role of sort of a project program manager, these were the areas that she has both experience, skills, and expertise in. Project program assistance, research data analysis, fundraising, curriculum development, and customer service. Now, this is what I call a generic one, because what I would expect her to do once she sees a job announcement she's actually interested in, she would take these subcategories and only use the ones that fit the requirements on the announcement. So if the announcement wants someone who does data and research, does fundraising, or maybe communication, the subtitle could be changed. The subtitles are basically the requirements in the announcement. One of the things that I also tell people is job announcements are also looking for the ideal. rarely do they actually expect to get someone who has all the requirements in the announcement. So if you can fit 80% of the announcement, 75 to 80% of that announcement, it's worth submitting your resume. Again, as I said, we spent quite a few hours just talking about all of these different things, similar to what Rhonda had talked about earlier, to really tease out, okay, what did you really do here? What was the result? How can you show what your successes have been? Just don't make it a description of your activities, but use that SOAR schematic that Rhonda recommended. And that's when we, again, this is just she and I talking, but she's the one that put this together. This is her resume. I wanted her to put the effort in, and I just did some of the critique of trying to get her to think further on, okay, you know, like this one. How much did you actually bring in with the grant? So again, that quantification, especially for Americans, is important. I once had a friend who was a documentarian. He did a film on Puerto Rico. He says, I have to do 2 films. One talks about the beauty of the island. The other one talks about the size, the height of the mountain and the length of the river. That one's for the Americans, and the other one is for the Latins. We like quantification. Again, this doesn't discount putting down a chronological work history, which is here. The difference is we've taken all those bullet points out of these individuals and aggregated them into some meaningful subcategories to concentrate and show where your skills and experiences are. They're critical, just like for the federal resume, the subcategories have to follow the key words in the announcement, because that's what, again, will draw the attention of the hiring official. In the NGO community, it's quite possible, similar to the federal community, you can go through 3 levels. One, an initial sorting of the resumes that fit the key words. The second, maybe a group of colleagues gonna reduce it down to 3 to 5 candidates. And then the selecting official may look at the top 5. So there's a winnowing process that you're trying to get through to even get in front of the hiring official. Again, as Jodi mentioned, the education and then the specialized skills. In this case, I'm trying to remember here, she still has NCE, and I had asked her to put that right up front. She hasn't done that yet. I'll have to get back to her on that one. And one of her long-term interests is to get an M&E job. So I also asked her to put that in the very end. So sort of, that's the last thing someone would see, that this was something that she's also familiar with. I also try and get them to, many times, they'll put courses they've had. But again, as a hiring official, I'm looking for someone who knows how to do something, not just know about something. So for me, it's important to have things like, what are some of the tools she's used? Problem tree analysis, logical framework, theory of change, stakeholder analysis. These are all key, what would you call them? Terminology within the development community that people want to know if you know about these tools and if you've used them. So, you know, again, this is just more specific in terms of a general knowledge of international development. I actually have worked with some of the tools that the field uses. So those are the types of things I look for and try and convert these chronological resumes into these functional resumes. For me, the functional resume is like hitting the reviewer between the eyes. You have a problem, hey, I've worked in this area and these are my results. I also ask them when they do a cover letter, similar to what someone mentioned earlier, I usually never read cover letters, quite frankly. I thought they were a waste of time. they would say, you're a great organization, I'd love to work with you. Yeah, I know that. If you can do a mini resume, maybe some of the points that are in that announcement as part of your cover letter, which is a complement to your resume. So just some added bullet points of saying, oh, I'm applying because you're looking for someone who can do ABC. I've done ABC that you'll see more fully outlined in my resume, and here's some additional points. So again, market yourself. And finally, it's the networking. In this time of the virus, the idea of being able to set informational interviews, or as Jodi calls them, career exploration interviews, which I really like, because that's what it is. You're really exploring, this is where I want to be in 5 or 10 years. What are the pieces I'm missing? Are there short courses I can do? Do I need to go back to get an advanced degree? Are there certificates how did you get your job? So having a resume like this, it helps them see where the gaps may be to help you think through, yes, you're looking for a job, but you're also looking for a career. So what are the pieces that you're currently missing that you may need to also consider as you're doing your job exploration? I think that's all I need to say. Certainly if there's questions or additions, I'll be available and open to talk about it.
Yeah, one thing, Randy, so first of all, thank you for doing this. And there's a couple of things that I want to underscore in what you just said. There's a reason why Randy keeps talking about networking, and that is because it works. There is so much evidence out there about how most people find their jobs through their network, and it is also a way to kind of beat out a lot of competition. That's the way to find the hidden job market. Not every job is posted. In fact, a majority of jobs are not. And so if you can find out a job before it gets posted, or you can get a job before it gets posted, that's going to be really helpful. So, so Randy, I really appreciate you talking about that, because we do tend to focus on resumes. Resumes do need to be written, they do need to be done, but we also want to recommend that you encourage your mentees to focus on networking as well, to make sure that does not get neglected. And as Randy said, there are people that get really hyper focused on their resumes, and that's not the best use of their time. And so you know, I think it's a little maybe cheeky of us to be talking about networking during a webinar, a resume review webinar, but there's a reason why we bring that up, and hopefully we don't have to convince anybody of that.
I think just to add to that, you can still, I've been struggling with this with the mentees I've been working with, you can still network.
Yep.
Because of my own career, I know quite a few people in both government and in the not-for-profit sector, and almost all the sectors, because I was an evaluation specialist apart from being in management. And I'm able to set them up for their initial career exploration interviews. So I've just had 2 mentees who I've connected with 3 of my former students when I used to teach in the university, who aren't working at consulting firms, who are very open to talking with them. And I always tell my mentees, when you meet someone, always ask for 2 more references. That's how you build your network. Don't just say, okay, we had a great interview, I learned so much, but you have to continue expanding that network. And you can do it even today in this virus environment. I had another one of my former mentees just send me an email saying, hey, we're hiring, are you working with anyone? We're looking for a project assistant. So using your own networks to get your mentee started is also something you can do even in these times.
And some of my clients have actually found that it's easier to network with people right now. And I think part of that is because people are so starved for some novelty if they've been working from home for months and months.
Exactly.
And so I really recommend that people take advantage of this. And so there was a question about a session on cover letters. And so Jodi, I think that's something that we should put in our little hopper. And because cover letters, Randy brought up a good point. Yeah. Not everybody reads cover letters,
exactly.
But yet, at the same time, like resumes, you have to write them. And so to demystify that process, I think I think that's something that we can look into doing.
Yeah, and I always say that to people too. You're right. They're like, well, I've been told that nobody reads them, or people don't usually read them, and that's fine. Some don't, and that's okay. But some do. Some, like me, not only read them, but if you really want a job for me and you're applying for a job, I better see a cover letter telling me exactly why you are, wanting this position, because to me, it shows me that you are going above and beyond the expected, right? And so I like them. Now, I don't like a poorly written cover letter. So if it's going to be one that I can tell is just a total template they've just added, and it's just very generic, no, it'd be better not to do one in that case if you are going to have a lot of spelling errors or typos or things like that. But I generally say do one, and you know what? They may never know that they may never read it, but they may. And it may be what sets you apart from somebody and what actually gets you the job. So, make the decision. It's your decision too. So.
All right, Jodi. So let's turn it. Let's go to the next live review. And so,
if Randy, if you can stop sharing your screen, please, and then Rhonda will be able to share hers to get on. Thank you so much.
Okay. And
appreciate it.
And so, just give me one moment here.
No problem. And so, this last part. And we're actually just coming up on the hour now, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible. This was designed to be like a live resume review, right, with a client. And unfortunately, medical things happen and we can't plan those. So that's fine. We're still going to do it. And I'm going to do it similar to how I approach a resume review session. So the first thing I do when I make a resume
Jodi,
review.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. Do you want me to play the role of Janet?
I guess you could, but you know what? I think actually with time and stuff, we'll just do it the other way. But thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Okay. Sure.
Just because, that's great. So what I do is I ask the client before they're coming to please get me the resume in advance so that I can take a look at it a little bit. And then I do usually ask, or if I'm, when I'm meeting with them, the first thing I'm going to ask is, tell me a little more about what you want to do. What are you hoping to get with this resume? What's your game plan? What's your desire, to get kind of a sense of whether they're looking at federal or nonprofit or something, very different. You want to know that before you start giving them feedback, because you're going to give them feedback based on the kind of application they're putting in or the kind of jobs they're really seeking, right? So I'll share with them some of the templates and stuff, but what I do first is when I go through like this, here we have the RPCV Janet, and I just redacted the PII, of course, but had the name and the address and such up front. Obviously, and that was fine. I always make sure that their email address is not inappropriate. I mean, most of them aren't, but on occasion, you don't want to have an email address that says like I heart beer at Gmail or whatever. You want to have a professional one, of course. So so looking for that kind of thing. And then here, as I just look at her first, part of her first page here, her first category is the mission statement, and she's calling it mission statement. And I think you could read this probably okay, where, it says, I'm a positive, highly motivated person. I demonstrate strong delegation and excellent communication at all levels of an organization. I apply empathetic leadership and training and teaching in order to be an exemplary role model for students and peers. So, so there's 3 I statements they all start with I too. So, so I would give her some counsel on that. But before I start that, I always look for, and I look over the resume as a whole, and I come in with something, you know, to let them know, hey, it really looks like you put a lot of work into this. It's not easy, is it? You know, and have a little bit of a conversation about that to set them at ease too. And I put out there for them, you know, I'm going to give you a lot of detailed responses here and detailed feedback. This does not mean that your resume was horrible. These are ways that I'm suggesting that you might, you know, like get it to that next level. But feel free to take any or all or none or some of what I'm going to share here today, because I always put that out there that I'm not a guru on resumes. I mean, I've looked at a lot of resumes, I've written and revised and edited a lot of resumes, but ultimately it's a very personal, resume writing is a very personal thing, and it's your style and what you want to do. So I always put that out there in the beginning and try to find something that, you know, is either funny or just, you know, going in with something like that. And then starting with the detailed, you know, responses. In this case, what I would say here is, you know, the mission statement, I think what you're meaning here, it seems like the information that you're really sharing here is similar to what I call the key qualifications or career summary. I tend to like key qualifications, not just qualifications or summary of qualifications, but key qualifications, because the truth of the matter is you have a lot of qualifications. These are your like central ones, your key ones, your really important ones as related to the job or the industry that you're going for. So I always, you know, kind of make that. I prefer key qualifications. Now, what I would do with that as well is notice how it's small. It's bolded. They're both bolded, but it's in small. It's not all caps like the next header is. So I would give her the feedback of, you know, make sure that you're consistent with everything. So, you know, employment history, mission statement, or key qualifications, or whatever you're calling it. Each of those headers is the same size, the same, you know, font style, all of that. It's just, that's really important. Employment history is definitely, I associate that more with more of your functional resume, because the functional resume, you have all their skills that come up, and then on the end, they might call it employment history, because it really is just a listing of their organization, the location, their job title, and the dates. There's no details, right? Right, Randy?
Right.
So you can call it employment history there. It's very much, that's what it is. But in this style of a resume, you know, I would call it professional experience, right? And then this person goes into their Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia, right? And what their dates. And you can definitely do that. As I was saying, when I was going through that sample one, I might encourage, and of course, put the S on the Corps, silent S, that, you know, Peace Corps, that silent S gets people all the time, right? But I would probably either put Peace Corps and then Namibia on the one line, and then the job title, and I would probably put more than volunteer. Maybe it is volunteer, and it is volunteer, but maybe it's, I don't know, it looks like she was an educator, a teacher. Great, teacher, you know, ESL teacher / volunteer, or whatever. You could put something that gives them a little more of a sense of what that experience was than just volunteer. So I would probably do that. I generally, like here, the 818 to 320, you can definitely do that. Alternatively, you can do the spelled out months or the abbreviations, you know, JAN, or, you know, whatever it is, MAR, period. That, just be consistent however you are. And then this is super, super picky, I know, but do you notice when you see the 818 and then the dash, notice how from the 18, there's no space, there's just the dash, and then there's a space, and then there's the other one. This is how picky I get, and I apologize, but be consistent. Either put the, you know, 18 and then space dash space, or no space dash no space. I like the space because I think it's a little, it makes it a little bigger. I personally like what I think they call the N dash, where if you put two dashes together with no space before or after, it will convert into a little bit longer dash. That I just like that one because it's a little bit bigger, easier to read, but that's fine. So under the first experience here, Peace Corps volunteer, Namibia, you have primary assignment as a senior and upper primary education project volunteer, math and science. Okay, I bet you that she was a teacher, so I would probably put upper education, you know, or upper education teacher instead of our project teacher, or instead of volunteer maybe. But not that you're totally not acknowledging that Peace Corps is a volunteer service, but just you have that once. You don't have to have it a lot there. Taught at a local secondary school, this institution of learning and development serves many. So here how it says, taught at a local secondary school, comma, this institution of learning and development serves many of the poor and unemployed families. Just slash out this institution of learning and development and make serves serving at a local secondary school serving many of the poor and unemployed families of the area. And I would put a number there, maybe serving 100 plus poor and whatever. If you can, anytime you can, when you can quantify, it really makes it pop. It makes the experience more believable and such. So I would definitely do that. That's my example for it. Now that is, and this is a little bit unique, and I see this type, and it's fine, just be consistent, where people will put a little, like a sentence or two about the experience overall, and then they have the bullets. My personal preference is, if I'm doing a standard resume and doing the bullets, I'm just going to put that as my first bullet and then go from there. But it's up to you, and that is one, one option, certainly. You don't have to have the bullets in order of like what they happened, when they happened, right? You don't have to have them like, oh, I can't put this one down yet because I did this one next. No, put whatever one's most related up front. Everything in the past tense other than the current job, and that can be in the first person singular, but don't put I organize and implement. You'd say just organize and implement. Great. And then here, the first bullet showing taught life sciences, English as a second language, and arts to grade 8, comma, put the comma before the space after the 8. These are very little things, I know, but, and the same thing with 160 learners, instead of a period there, just make it the comma, ages 13 to 19, and then again, the comma before the space. Many of whom had or never passed English before. Okay. Yep. And if you had if there was a success rate, like you were there, the person was there for almost 2 years, right? If you notice an increase in that, it'd be great to have that as part of that bullet, achieving a X% increase in, learners formerly diagnosed as, or whatever, formerly identified as something, like if you could get some kind of a number in there, that's great. Let's see, consistently strove to rise above challenges faced with creativity. Consistently strove to rise above challenges faced with creativity and thinking and finding a way to connect learners to the environment and ecological importance of keeping our earth. Okay, there's a lot probably going on in that, but I would probably do consistently, instead of strove to rise above challenges, I would probably put something like consistently demonstrated ability to persevere in spite of blank and blank challenges, comma, leading youth to connect with the environment, and do you see what I mean? It's just restructuring it somewhat so that the flow's a little better and maybe a little more, I don't know, punchy. I always come back to that kind of that can come across as very compelling, I guess. Let's see, next one, lead. Okay, right here, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see by any client, is lead versus led. So when you're talking about this present tense, lead team of learners, that's right, that would be correct. But the past tense would be led, L-E-D, led team of how many learners? Led team of 20 learners, 15 learners, 5 learners. It doesn't matter how little it is, the numbers can make it pop. And by the way, speaking of numbers, you can actually, you can ignore the under 10 spell it out rule that we all learned in high school, or not high school, but in school growing up. Unless you're going for a job that's like communications and you're trying to show your knowledge of all of the, APA standard, English, whatever. But in general, the number 8 is going to pop a lot more than EIGHT, if that makes sense. And I'm looking at our clock here, and it is 1:11, it looks like. So I am going to go on here, and then I will answer some questions for anyone who does want to stay on. Certainly, if you can go to the next screen, please, that would be great, Rhonda. And I only put parts of this on here because I knew not all of it would fit, and I wanted it to be big enough that you could actually see it. So this isn't like the very next, description. but it shows just before the education and such. So again, I would do the same things I was talking about with the French teacher and where, and now in this, it looks like she has Lake Forest School District and Lake Bluff. So if those were during the same times or the different times, if they were the different times, you might put them in separate ones, or if you put them together, just, have it so that both of the employers are, I don't think you have to write employer. You could just put the name of the employer and they're going to know, right? As well. So that's great. Now look at the, does anyone see an inconsistency with dates here? If you look at, you have on the French teacher one, you have the 998, which is how she was doing it with the other things. But then on the next one, suddenly it just goes to years, and it's just 2002 to 2007. You want to be really consistent, and generally you want to put the month year to month year. Now some people will say put month day year, which none of us can remember that, but in government, sometimes federal government, sometimes they have that, but typically it's just the month year. But the reason they want the month is if you say 2015 to 2016, that could be as much as 2 years, January 2015 to December 2016, or as little as 2 months, or even 2 weeks or 2 days, right? December 2015 to whatever 2016. It's a big difference. And if they have to quantify and figure out if you have the amount of experience they're wanting or needing or requiring, they can't do that. Now with a long one like 2002 to 7, you have at least 4 years, right? But you want to be consistent regardless. Let's look at the bullets really quickly on this. Just a couple of them. I won't go through all of them, but dynamic world language teacher utilized total physical response. So praised for keeping classroom alive, creating stimulating fun and a learning environment. Great. Maybe it's that you might be able to even have, praised as dynamic world language teacher, keeping classroom alive and in the course of whatever study, something like that maybe. Pioneered world language assessment tool, okay, which were written in the curriculum for Spanish as well. What does that mean? Pioneered world language assessment tools, which were written into the curriculum for Spanish as well. Okay, so it sounds like I would probably talk to the person and say, okay, so pioneered whatever, translated or incorporated into, Spanish version as well, or Spanish materials. Good. So yeah, assisted in developing and writing new curriculum. Great. Exactly that. I mean, that one sounds fine, to meet state standards for world languages at an earlier age. Tutored French grades. Yeah. Now, you'll note in this next one, and now other than the date being very long ago, right? When you do not have to go back, nor should you go back that long. Now your master resume, definitely you can have all your stuff there. But you don't necessarily want to give them that much of a view into your own personal status, how old you are, right? Or how young you are, right? And that can be, discrimination is illegal, but we all know that it happens in many ways, and ageism is one of those things that it can happen sadly. But so you usually, now if you wanted, like my Peace Corps experience is now almost 30 years ago, and I value it and I love it and I want it on my resume, but I don't go all the way back to Peace Corps. What I'll do is I'll do the last 10, 15 years, depending on what job I'm going for. If I'm going for a senior level job that, they want a lot of experience, then you might, go a little bit further back, but I'm not going to go 30 years straight back and have all of my jobs. What I would do is I would say other professional experience or related, and then I would, or international, maybe for Peace Corps, I think what I've done, like international service, and then I would have Peace Corps there. And it's not showing as the date, within my, resume where, oh, there's a huge job gap. What'd she do between, right? So, so generally that's what I say for that. And then finally here, and then we'll see if you guys have any questions, and if you do need to, drop off, we certainly understand as well. We'll have a recording of this with regard to the education. She's put different education things down, which is fine. There was another one that was down there. You definitely, like with the, whatever you came out with, like here, the Alliance Française, okay, commercial and economic French business, okay, Indiana University, Bachelor of Science. Now, I would generally put those in chronological order. So I'm not sure, maybe you might have, this might be in chronological order, but with your, with your undergrad, you have Bachelor of Science, or BS or whatever. And then you don't have to put the dates. Good. I'm glad that she didn't have the dates in here, because those would have showed age as well. You don't have to, once you get to a certain kind of level. It's not, you don't really have to dump it in there. They're going to see that you have extensive experience. So, those are some of the things that I would give to her. And I would definitely talk to her about, the ED action verbs, and really, maybe combining a couple of the shorts, like, reduced manufacturing cost by 20% in raw materials. Great. That's awesome. That's an outcome, right? What'd you do to get to that? Was it, discovered new synthetic material for urine control, leading to a reduction in leading to a 20% reduction in manufacturing costs? If there's two of those that are together, put them together and save some, space. Okay. Any comments or questions that, any questions? Great. Thanks, Rhonda, for putting that in there. Sarah, great question. And this is one that we should address before we finish anyway. I was always told that a resume had to be just one page and that people actually read them, except Peace Corps federal resumes, so that they would actually read them. Is that still recommended, or does it depend on the job or how much experience you have? A little bit of both. I mean, if you are a new grad out of college, maybe you went to Peace Corps right after, and so you have, less than, 3 to 5 maybe years of experience, you probably should be able to fit it to one page. Now, that said, if you were extremely active and you worked since the age of 16 and you did some other things and you have other information that is valuable, I am not somebody who's going to say, oh, I can't believe they went on, they did 2 pages and they're only 25 or whatever. I'm not going to say that either. But I think if you can fit your content onto one page, great. But if it does go on to 2 pages, no, and this is very much my thing, I generally say one to 2 pages, right, is generally sufficient. Now, for somebody that's a seasoned professional who has, 30 years of experience and, whatever, yeah, if they're going for a higher level position, they're probably going to need to have more. Federal, you almost always have more, because even if you're not, it's just the way that it comes out, and if you're using the builder and all of that. But I think you don't have to put all your history on there anyway. So even if you do have more experience, you could easily probably fit within a 2-page resume on a non-federal standard type of job. I'm a big believer in a 1 or 2-page resume. I'm not a big fan of the 1 3/4 page or the 1 1/4 page. If it's going to be 1 1/4 page, fit it onto one, right? So that they can be left with that, wow, they look great, I've got to bring them in and see what else they have to offer, versus, them not being able to answer that question of, well, gosh, I wonder if they also have fill in the blank. No, duh, they would have put it, they have blank space, because it screams to me, that blank space, like there's nothing else about you that makes you, a good candidate. And that's just not usually true. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't know, Rhonda or Randy, if you have comments on that, or other comments before we, get to other questions or close.
I think that this is a really good point of why you want to do informational interviews, because the length of a resume really does depend on the industry and even the organization.
Right.
Like, if you're applying to Google, it doesn't matter how much experience you've had. If you can't fit it onto one page, they're not going to look at it. International development resumes, on the other hand, often go in 4 to 5 pages, regardless of how much time, because they are often used in grant proposals where the USAID or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation wants to see detailed information of everyone who's done work. And so really, the answer is, yeah, it depends. But it doesn't just depend on your experience. It also depends on the organization and industry. And so, and again, it can make a really big difference. And so this is another reason why you don't want to just listen to one person, and you don't want to generalize a lot of information. You want to make sure that you're talking to people in the industry and in the organization you want to work for, so that you know how to write to them. And like Randy said, your resume is a marketing document. It's not a chronology of your work experience. It is a statement to say, I am perfect for this job.
Exactly.
So you need to know who you're marketing to.
Exactly.
I'd just add to that, if you recall the two examples I gave, my mentee with 3 years of experience and myself with 30 years of experience, they were both 2 pages, back
Yep.
to back, not separate pages. It's a 1-page back to back.
Ah, yeah. Yep. So really 6 or 4, right? 2 pages, you said?
No, no, they were both 1 page, but on both sides fully.
Oh, so 2 pages, 1 page, both sides. Got it. Got it.
One was
Yep.
with 3 years experience and one was with 30 years
Yep.
experience. You can get them into that.
Exactly. Yep. No, that's great. Are there any of the mentors that are taking this kind of as a preparation for, you know, working with their mentee, who have any questions, or maybe things that we didn't cover that you would like materials on or assistance with? You know, we're happy to help. So just dump those into the chat box, and we'll do what we can. If we can't, you know, answer everything here, of course, but we're happy to follow up too. So.
Yeah, Jodi, are we going to do a post a survey afterwards?
We will do a follow-up email with a survey, and we can ask that question as well. What additional material, what additional content would be helpful for you?
Okay, great. So anything else?
I've been looking at the chat box, and it looks like, Rhonda, you've either answered a lot of them, which is great. Yeah, so I think looks like people are in a pretty good place, I hope.
I want to ask a question, if you don't mind. So for those mentors here, are you feeling more comfortable with doing resume reviews and mentoring in general because of this? And so we've got a couple of comments where people said it was very informative. I want to hear if people are feeling more comfortable doing resume reviews and mentoring after this this webinar. So if you wouldn't mind just, you know, doing a thumbs up or a comment in the chat, that would be great.
Great.
Or we could let people go. So
Okay. Hopefully we didn't put you to sleep at least.
yeah, exactly.
I like to think the hunger's kicking in. Lunchtime.
Yeah, it is definitely time. So there's a few questions that have been asked me privately, so I'm going to respond to those. And otherwise, so I want to keep but maybe we can stop the recording at this point, or?
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We'll look forward to being in touch with you, and thanks so much for taking your time to be with us today.